Very nice. Peter Stearns said this: history helps provide identity. Stories well done are stories that reveal how people and societies have actually functioned. They prompt thoughts about the human experience in other times and places. We are studying a book of history that contains stories that indeed are well done. Why did God's nation of Israel spend 400 years in Egypt? How in the world did they end up there? We're taking a journey in Genesis to try to find out. And the reason this is so important, the seed line of Christ would come through this nation. Our religious heritage, if you will, is interwoven with what is occurring. The first religion in Genesis is a family type religion. God dealt with the family through the father, the patriarch. Thus we hear sometimes patriarchal age. Next came the Mosaic age, when the law, the Ten Commandments, were given. We're up in Exodus now. It began when Moses received that law on the mountain. Remember the mountain that quaked in God's presence? Now, from Exodus, we're going to back up again a little bit here. In Genesis 12, God talking to Abraham, I will make you a great nation. That's 12:2 of Genesis. In you, all the families of the earth will be blessed. 12:3. When we get to Genesis 32, has the great nation promise been fulfilled? No. But something important is about to happen. The great nation that has been promised gets a name. Your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel. Now, Jacob is Abraham's grandson. And that's when Jacob had his wrestling match. It was an all-nighter, an all-night wrestling match. I don't know if the man of God did a single leg takedown, but I do know he touched the socket of Jacob's hip, came out of joint. Sounds like a painful injury there. How did God's nation end up in Egypt for 400 years? We're going to keep moving toward answering that question. I want to welcome you this morning. It is good to be back. As always, I like to offer an invitation. We'll sing a song at the end of the service. And if you need the prayers of the church and want to come up and let us know about that, there will be somebody to receive you and can hear your request, and we can pray for you. Or you may not be a Christian but want to become one, and we would be glad to assist you in being baptized, immersed in water for the remission of your sins. When you're baptized, your sins are actually washed away. How about that? Acts 22:16. You put on Christ, Galatians 3:27. You get newness of life, Romans 6:4. You get a new name, Christian. Yes, you do, and that is a good one. So we'd be glad to assist you with that. Okay, normally I like to give some updates. Let me do those right now. So when you come to Dale Ridge, and by the way, I'm sitting back there in the classroom just kind of thinking, and I've alluded to this before, but I hope you don't mind me going back and reminding you what a beautiful room that is. I love the light. I'm a light guy. Sun coming in the windows. I love it. It's such a nice venue. I'll just call it a venue. I guess that's okay. And for a teacher to teach in, it's so nice. And so I'm sitting there, and Frank hands me a pen. Red pen. Maybe he does that a lot. And I'm looking at it, and it's nice. That's nice. You got your name on there and the phone number. And Frank says, if it says the Church of Bocephus, don't write with it. So I kind of thinking about that, and I lean over to Frank and say, Hank Williams Jr. You know, Bocephus, that's kind of his, I don't know, maybe nickname or whatever. And Frank kind of goes into telling me a little story about Hank Jr.'s honeymoon, and he took his wife to Africa, and she got sick and almost died. So when you come to Del Ridge, you never know what you're going to hear and find out. I mean, that was a pretty cool story. I mean, I actually like old Hank, and I didn't know that about his wife. So I get on exit 137. Yes, there's no use even telling you. You already know. But exit 150, great. And this week, I did not veer off on 581 like the last time I came. Oh, by the way, they already have the signs on the interstates for winter weather. And then, if I'm not mistaken, it's supposed to get real nice later in the week. Am I right on that? Yeah. And that's kind of cool. And I've got crocuses blooming in my flower beds. I love them. My daffodils, I think, are going to be blooming soon. Maybe after, if it hits in the 70s and 80s later, they're probably going to get here quickly. Love the spring flowers. All right, how about Miss Kay, the happy quilter? I think I mentioned last time that we were having a visitor that Kay has been sitting with, Lisa. She's still coming. I mean, she comes to about all the services. I mean, Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday Bible class. They had an event at the church building yesterday, an art class, and Kay met Lisa there. So she was there for the art class, and so hopefully one day I'm going to have a good report to tell you about Lisa. We'll see. She's a retired teacher like Kay and I, so we have that bond there. Oh yes, I'm actually looking at some notes I wrote during Bible class. Sorry, Darren, I'll have to admit, I wrote them during Bible class on a piece of the bulletin, and that was not nice, but I did get a second bulletin where this, instead of taking the torn one home. But anyway, using Frank's pen, I am planning later this month to do a mission campaign. Now, I'm not going to get on a plane, fly overseas. This mission campaign is in Maryland. It's an AMC, American Mission Campaign. That's associated with Rob Whitaker. Rob Whitaker, okay, so you know of him. The House to House School of Evangelism. That's one of the campaigns. I think he does about 2 a year. You know, he does workshops about all the time. But he does, I think, 2 missions. I think the other one's in Texas in the summer. But I saw this one and just decided, I thought about it, you know, and I decided I really ought to do it. It's close enough I can drive to, and I really ought to do this. So I registered, and I've got a room reserved at the Hampton Inn that the campaign is affiliated with, if you want to stay there or stay with members at their house, whatever. But anyway, I guess I better go now since I'm registered and I got a hotel room. So that is in about 3 weeks. If you think of it in about 3 weeks, just if you remember old Coach up there in Maryland, say a prayer that all will go well. Okay. All right, I believe that is what I wanted to say. That promise, I will make you a great nation, was originally given to Abraham, Genesis 12, and next, or then, it was given to his son later, his son Isaac. That was in Genesis 26. So Abraham gets a promise. Isaac gets a promise. Guess who the promise was given to next? You can probably guess. Isaac's son Jacob. Yes, he got the promise as well. Did you remember that? All three of them got it. That's Genesis 28. Coach, when is the great nation promise going to happen? I thought it was given to Abraham, and it was back in Genesis 12. And in fact, while we're there, let me say in Genesis 15, God tells Abraham to count the stars. Look up, count the stars. So shall your descendants be. Now, note descendants. That kind of leaves it a little bit open-ended, doesn't it? When the promise is going to happen, Abraham's son Isaac, he hears his great nation promise. I will make your descendants, there's that word again, multiplies the stars of the heaven. I will give to your descendants. Now that's the promise in Genesis 26. And by the way, why did Isaac even deserve that promise? Why did he even deserve it? Because Abraham obeyed my voice. He kept my charge, my commandments. That's Genesis 26, verse number 5. Isaac, I hope you appreciated your dad. Del Ridge men, I hope we appreciate our dads. If they led us to become godly men, I hope we appreciate them. And if they're still alive, maybe we ought to tell them that. Okay, now we come to Abraham's grandson, Jacob. He's the one that becomes Israel. God had told Jacob in Genesis 28, here comes the D word again, your descendants shall be, it's not going to be stars in the sky this time. You remember what it was? As the dust of the earth. And in you and your seed, all the families of the earth shall be blessed. That's Genesis 28, verse number 14. Now, there's a lot of stars out there, isn't it? A lot of dust out there, isn't it? Okay, now we're going to bounce ahead momentarily to Acts 6 and 7. Apparently, there were many Greek-speaking Jews. You know what they were called? Hellenists. Living in the Jerusalem area. Now, this is up in the New Testament now. We're in Acts. These were Jews born beyond the borders of Palestine, educated in the Greek culture. They complained that their widows were neglected in the daily needs. The apostles, using skilled diplomacy, instructed the Grecian disciples to select 7 good men of their own and administer to the needs of the widows. One of those 7 is Stephen. He was a powerful preacher of the gospel. Well, opposition arose against Stephen in Jerusalem by the Jews. Does that surprise you? They stirred the pot, they stirred up the people, had him arrested with made-up charges. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Stephen goes before the council to defend himself. And in chapter 7 of Acts, he's giving a defense. In his defense, he details a lot of Jewish history. And I'm going to note verse 17 and 18. I notice some of you are apparently taking notes and writing down scripture. This would be Acts 17 and 18. Here's what he said. But when the time of the promise drew near, which God had sworn to Abraham, the people grew and multiplied in Egypt, till another king arose who did not know Joseph. That's Acts 7. Okay? We're trying to move ahead until eventually we're getting to the life of Joseph, who will give us the answer to the question, how did God's nation end up in Egypt? Okay, from Acts, we're going to go back to Genesis 15. Then he said to Abram, know certainly that your descendants will be strangers in a land that is not theirs, and will serve them, and they will afflict them 400 years. Now, I think you know where that is. Verse 14, chapter 15, verse number 13 and 14, if you're writing them down. Here's 14. And also the nation whom they serve I will judge. Afterward they shall come out with great possessions. And by the way, when you're over in Exodus reading about them coming out, see if you don't read where that happened. That great possession promise. Now, keep in mind, this is the same chapter that God tells Abraham, where he brings him outside, look toward the heaven, count the stars, if you're able to number them, so shall your descendants be. Okay, what I'm doing now is trying to piece everything together. Coach Anderson, I thought you got the background information over with last time you were here. Well, give me one more week, and I'll try to get the background. And I think you're really going to see how this kind of brings it all together as we move ahead, get into Genesis 37, talking about Joseph. So, now we're going to jump. We're jumping all over the place right now. We're going to settle in eventually. Genesis 46, Jacob, or Israel at this point, is on his way to be reunited with his son Joseph, who he thought had been dead for years. Now he finds out he's alive. He's going into Egypt to see him. That traveling caravan stops in Beersheba. Kind of a funny sounding name, isn't it? They stop in Beersheba on the way to Egypt, and that night God speaks to Jacob, Israel, again. Then God spoke to Israel in the visions of the night and said, Jacob, Jacob. He said, here I am. So he said, I am God, the God of your father. Do not fear to go down to Egypt, for I will make you a great nation there. Genesis 46, 2 and 3. So in essence, this is kind of answering the question, at least one of the main questions. Why did God's people spend 400 years in Egypt. I will make you a great nation there. Now, we've not answered the question yet, how did they get there? They couldn't just march in and say, hey, we're coming to Egypt to become a great nation. They had to get there somehow. And by the way, let me restate that promise using another commentary, just to emphasize, another version. And I'm using this kind of like for commentary. Then God said, I am the God of your father. Don't be afraid to go to Egypt, because I will make your descendants a great nation there. Now, what is nice about this, we have verses pointing to the time that God's nation will become great. At least a great number. Do we have verses after it happened that look back to it? Yes, we do. Hear Moses speak before the children of Israel at the end of the wilderness wanderings. Now, we're way up in Exodus again. They wander 40 years before they cross the Jordan and enter into Canaan. Remember our Joshua study from a while back? And this is what Moses said. He is your praise. He is your God, who has done for you these great and awesome things which your eyes have seen. Your fathers, hear it, went down to Egypt with 70 persons. And now the Lord your God has made you as the stars of heaven in multitude. It's happened. That promise, it's happened. Now that's Deuteronomy 10, verse number 21 and 22. Here's another one that tells us it's happened. During the time of the king, Solomon is now reigning in Israel. So this is long after the Egypt group. Judah and Israel were as numerous as the sand by the sea in multitude, eating and drinking and rejoicing. That's 1 Kings 4, verse number 20. Now, having said this, we get to Genesis 35. Now, we're getting close to 37. We're getting close, where we'll start with the life of Joseph. In 35, Rachel gives birth to Benjamin. And you probably remember what else happened at that time. Rachel dies in childbirth. And I'm in Genesis 35, where we have the 12 sons of Jacob, Israel, they're given, along with their moms. And I'm in 35, Genesis 35, verse number 23. Genesis 35, verse number 23, the sons of Leah. Remember her? Rachel's sister? Yeah, she's the one that Jacob really ended up marrying first. All right, the sons of Leah were Reuben. There's your firstborn, Jacob's firstborn. Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun. All right, there's group number one of the sons of Israel. The sons of Rachel were Joseph and Benjamin. There's group number two. Now remember this kind of like competition almost they got into? Rachel was so upset she couldn't have a baby. Here, take my handmaid. Have kids by her. I can kind of call them mine, I guess. Remember that competition deal? I mean, how weird was that? Wow, but I mean, I know it was so different back then. I know it was. I mean, concubines and all that. So, we've got two groups. Now, here comes Rachel's concubine, her maidservant, the sons of Bilhah. Rachel's maidservant were Dan and Naphtali. Naphtali. I didn't used to pronounce it that way, but in my Bible reading, a lot of times when I walk, I'll put on this little fanny pack around here and I'll put my phone right there and listen to scripture as I walk or hike sometime. And I thought, Naphtali. I think I used to call it Naphtali. But anyway, the sons of Bilhah, Rachel's maidservant, Dan and Naphtali. And here's group 4. The sons of Zilpah. Who was that? Leah's handmaid were Gad and Asher. So there you go. There's the 12 sons of Jacob. I'm going to shift gears slightly. Now that doesn't surprise you as much as I bounce back and forth. And we're getting towards the end of the background information. You're probably thinking, hooray to yourself. David Aikman, who wrote Great Souls, 6 Who Changed the Century, said this: I have always personally been inspired by the lives of great people. It is hard not to be energized by the stories of how individuals have risen above adversity or suffering and have maintained a purity in the face of great temptation. Where do you think I'm getting to with this? Our age, with its habit of instantly judging a man or woman's life based on the fragmentary and proverbial soundbite, is often impatient with, and I like this, detail, nuances, and depth. Those last 3 words, they just kind of grabbed me. Detail, nuances, and depth. Think about someone you admired growing up and likely still do admire. If they're not around physically, at least in your memory. Someone that you admire. Grandparent? Special aunt or uncle? Teacher? Good old mom or dad? Preacher? Coach? Don't you remember special details about them? Can't you think of something right now that made them special, maybe even striking in their own way? Now, they may not have been rich, they may not have been pretty, they may not have been popular, they may not have been wealthy, but man, did they have an impact on you. You can still remember them. You might remember their laugh. You may remember that lady who used to fix those pies and how it smelled when you first walked in her door. The depth of that person. Didn't that impact you toward them? Clarence McCartney said this: Augustine wrote how men wander over the earth and wander at the rivers and mountains and the sea and the stars, while all the time man himself is a great wonder. How fearful and how wonderful are man's terrible and glorious capacities and possibilities. It is said that every man's life contains sufficient material for a great novel. You know, God uses the lives of Bible characters to teach us, to encourage us, to warn us. Who can forget the impact of these truths lived through people like Esther and David, Elijah, Moses, Ruth, Samson, and we could go on with this. These biographies take us from truth and doctrine to truth lived in everyday life of real men and women. And make no mistake, it is not always pretty. These stories take us from truths in teaching and weave them into the fabric of everyday life. God's training manual, the Bible, is full of lives that inspire and instruct. Do you remember that verse in Romans 15:4? For whatever things were written before were written for our learning, that we through the patience and comfort of the Scriptures might have hope. Romans 15, verse number 4. It appears that the purpose of these past writings, the Old Testament, is to teach us through the past, encourage us into the future. I'm going to refer back to McCartney one more time, and then let's end this background information. McCartney says this, of the person we're moving toward is a finely wrought and self-contained novella, short novella, describing in vivid detail the development of his character from charismatic and arrogant youth to compassionate middle-aged. Genesis reaches a melodramatic peak in these climactic last verses. A riches to rags to riches tale, replete with every human passion, love and hate, ambition and glory, jealousy and fury, tears and joy and grief are shed. Garments are rent in anguish. It's a gripping saga of treachery and deception and betrayal and forgiveness. Does it sound interesting? Well, we're going to get into this for the next several months as we talk about the life of Joseph and answer the question, how did the nation of God, through which Christ came, end up in Egypt? Let's stand and sing.